Marco DeSantis would never have imagined that a simple gesture of trust could change his life forever. 6 months earlier, he found himself alone at the helm of the restaurant Il Faro, the same place that his grandfather Carlo had built with love and sacrifice in the heart of Marina Alta, a town nestled between the sea and the hills. When Carlo died, he left Marco not only the keys to the restaurant, but also a legacy of dreams, fears, and responsibilities too big for a boy who had just finished his studies in economics. Before continuing, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our stories. At first, Marco had deluded himself that goodwill was enough. But managing Il Faro was not like solving a university exercise. There were emotions behind every dish, behind every customer smile, and above all, behind every small daily choice. In a few weeks, he found himself on the brink of bankruptcy without even understanding why. The account seemed regular, the staff was the same as always, but the customers were decreasing and the revenues were collapsing. At night, Marco couldn't sleep, tortured by the suspicion that someone might be working against him. And every time his thoughts turned to the head chef, Corrado Vitali, a gruff and arrogant man who felt superior to everyone, Marco felt his heart tighten. Corrado was good, no one doubted that, but something in him didn't add up. It was as if he was annoyed by the change, as if he would rather the restaurant go bad than recognize the authority of the young owner. Marco confided in his most trusted collaborator, Elena, the manager of the place. But she too, despite sharing his suspicions, knew that firing Corrado without proof would be a fatal mistake. And so, Marco remained, day after day, trapped in a silent war. It was a gray afternoon. The wind was blowing hard from the east and seemed to want to sweep away even Marco's last hopes. He was locked in his office when Elena knocked, with a strange, almost embarrassed expression. "Marco, there's a man in the room. He says he's looking for work. You should come and see." Marco sighed. It was certainly not the time to deal with new hires. But something, perhaps Elena's worried tone, pushed him to get up. When he reached the main room, he saw the man. He was in his 30s, dressed in worn clothes, his shoes worn out, his eyes marked by fatigue in the street. It was not difficult to understand that he was homeless. Instinctively, Marco felt compassion. He would give him something to eat and then say goodbye. But he did not have time to speak. "I'm looking for a job," the man said with a confident voice that contrasted with his appearance. "Anything. I can wash dishes, help in the kitchen, wait tables." Corrado, who happened to be there, laughed out loud. "This guy doesn't even know where a stove is located," he exclaimed, trying to humiliate him. But the man didn't let himself be intimidated. "Actually, I can cook, and very well too," he replied. "Italian, French, even a little Spanish." His tone was calm, confident. Corrado snorted in amusement. "I bet you 50 euros that you couldn't even make a decent lasagna." Marco, tired of seeing that arrogance, intervened. "I'll put up your 50 euros, he said, looking Corrado straight in the eye. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. The entire staff gathered curiously to try to better understand that anomalous situation. The challenge was launched. The man was called Daniele. With expert hands and surprising naturalness, he began to prepare his dish. The smell that came out of the kitchen made everyone's mouth water. When it was time to taste, there was no doubt. Daniele's lasagna was superior by far. Corrado bit his lip, furious, and returned to the kitchen without saying a word. After the challenge, Marco took Daniele aside. "If you want to work here, I have to be able to trust you," he told him bluntly. Daniele lowered his gaze as if, for the first time in a long time, he had found the courage to empty his soul. With a hoarse voice, he began to tell. He had not always been a man without roots. Years before, he had been a successful entrepreneur. He had created with his own hands a chain of small cafes along the coast, welcoming places, full of life, where every customer felt at home. He loved his job, and he loved his wife, with whom he had shared the dream of building something big. But everything changed the day he discovered he had been betrayed, not by enemies, but by the people he loved most. His wife and his most trusted partner had colluded behind his back, selling off his businesses, emptying his accounts, leaving him with nothing. It was a devastating blow. Daniele couldn't react. He didn't have the strength to fight in court or to ask for justice. Instead, he chose to disappear, to distance himself from everything and everyone, so as not to have to face the humiliation, so as not to have to see the dreams of a lifetime crumble piece by piece. So he had lived on the streets for months, forgotten by the world, clinging only to the memory of who he had been. Marco listened without interrupting, struck by the dignity that shone through every word. There was no anger in Daniele, only a deep melancholy and the desire to start over. And in that moment, Marco understood that the man deserved a second chance just as much as he himself needed to believe in second chances. Welcoming Daniele was a gamble, but it turned out to be the most successful of his life. In a few months, Il Faro changed its face. The dishes that Daniele prepared spoke to the heart. There was tradition, care, and passion in every flavor. The customers returned, enthusiastic. The reviews improved, and soon the name of the restaurant began to circulate on everyone's lips again. Corrado, the old head chef, tried several times to hinder him, jealous and frustrated. But against Daniele's talent and humility, every sabotage proved useless. With time, even Corrado lowered his weapons, recognizing, albeit through gritted teeth, the value of the newcomer. Marco and Daniele became a close-knit team. It seemed like they had always known each other. There was trust, respect, that complicity that cannot be built, that either comes spontaneously or it doesn't come at all. And yet, deep down, Marco never stopped wondering, what if he had made a mistake? What if one day Daniele had betrayed him as he had been betrayed by the one he loved? But that fear, little by little, melted away in the face of evidence. Daniele was authentic. He was sincere. And like him, he just wanted to leave the past behind him and build something real. Over time, Marco proposed to Daniele to become his partner. It was not a decision dictated by need, but by the deep desire to share a dream reborn together. They opened 2 other restaurants along the coast, both born under the same sign: simplicity, excellence, heart. Il Faro was no longer just a restaurant. It had become a symbol of rebirth. Corrado also found his place in the new project, becoming head of the party and changing his attitude. Over time, he understood how precious it was to be part of that new family that had been created, based on respect and loyalty. And Marco, inspired by everything he had experienced alongside Daniele, also found the strength to look Elena in the eyes and confess what he had been feeling for a long time. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. There was no need for big words. It was enough to hold her hand one evening under the starry sky, to make her understand everything. They got married a few months later in a small ceremony on the restaurant terrace while the sea was dyed gold at sunset. Daniele was the first to toast the newlyweds with a smile that told the whole story of the journey they had made up to that moment. As the celebrations continued, Marco stepped away for a moment on the terrace. He looked at the sea, felt the light wind caress his face, and turned to look at the faces of the people he loved: Elena, Daniele, the staff who had become family. He understood that sometimes luck is not in never falling, but in finding the courage to get up again when all seems lost, and that the greatest gifts often come in unexpected forms, like a tired and dirty man who walks into a restaurant with nothing to offer except his desire to start over. True wealth in life is still believing, even when everything has taught you to stop. Did you like this story? Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching the video till the end, and see you next story.